Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings MLB video for FanDuel and DraftKings for, we got Wednesday, June 17th. I'm sorry, Friday, June 17th. We have a 14-game slate on tap tonight starting at 7 o'clock, so we're going to go through each game. And what we do here in the Benny's Bat section is we look at each pitcher that's on the mound, try to figure out what their weaknesses are, then figure out which bat's profile to do the best against them. We got a lot of games to go over, so let's get right into it. First game we're going to talk about, Arizona against Philadelphia today. Robbie Ray is on the mound for Arizona, left-handed pitcher. 2016 right-handed bats are hitting .295 against them with 9 home runs in 49 innings pitched. Left-handed bats are only hitting about .235 with 1 home run in 19 innings, so we obviously want to attack them with the right-handed bats. A couple guys that stand out on that Philly team, Tommy Joseph, the rookie. He's done very well against left-handed pitching. 479 WOBA, 304 ISO in his limited at-bats since being called up from the minors. So definitely somebody we got to look at. Probably going to be hitting cleanup in that order today. Also like Miguel Franco off of the DL. He's got a 239 ISO score against left-handed pitching. So this is a guy that has some power and can jack one out of the yard. We also got to look at whichever catcher they decide to start today. Both Cameron Rupp and Carlos Ruiz hit left-handed pitching pretty well. Ruiz is actually very good against left-handed pitching, so hopefully he's the one who winds up getting the start. Rupp did start yesterday, so I'm hoping Ruiz gets his way into the lineup today. On the other side of this game, we got Adam Morgan on the mound, and Morgan's one of the weaker pitchers that we have going today. Philadelphia is a good hitter's park, so I think this Arizona team's in a pretty good spot. Left-handed bats hitting .275 against Morgan with 2 home runs in 9 innings. He is a lefty. Right-handed bats are hitting .297 against him with 7 home runs in 38 innings. So giving up about a home run every 5 innings and a pretty high batting average to both sides of the plate. I do really like Paul Goldschmidt here, 448 WOBA, 235 ISO for him. You know, probably one of the biggest right-handed bats they have in that Arizona team. I think Wellington Castillo, Beef, one of the best catching options on the day. 389 WOBA, 277 ISO against left-handed pitching for him. You can look at guys like Yasmani Tomas, Segura leading off, maybe even Peter O'Brien, the rookie who they just brought up. You know, all these guys do well against left-handed pitching. So I definitely think Arizona's in a pretty good spot today. I think these bats can put up a couple runs. Next game, we'll talk about Toronto at Baltimore. Aaron Sanchez on the mound for Toronto, and he's been pretty tough on right-handed bats. You know, left-handed bats kind of the way you want to go after him, but even left-handed bats still hitting only about .235 against them with 6 home runs in 45 innings. Chris Davis is one guy who I definitely want to use today. 397 WOBA against right-handed pitching, 325 ISO score against them, and he's also 6 of 10 lifetime off of Sanchez with 3 home runs. So yes, it is a small sample size, but when a guy's been that dominant in a small sample size and he profiles well against a pitcher, you know, that's definitely somebody that we want to look at. The only other left-handed bat you can look at, maybe Hyun-Soo Kim. He's been hitting second a lot of times for Baltimore against right-handed pitching, so he could be another guy up there. You know, 373 WOBA in his limited innings so far. His ISO score is only like 100, so he's not a guy with any power. You know, basically just somebody that can bang out a few singles for you. But at minimum price, a couple singles and a run scored might be enough to pay off his salary. So he could be one of those cheap guys that I think we should be taking a look at today. On the other side of this game, we have Mike Wright pitching, and Mike Wright is not a good pitcher. His last start was about a week ago against Toronto. 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 5 walks, 4 earned runs. So Toronto had knocked him around a little bit. You know, you got guys like Edwin Encarnacion, who's absolutely on fire right now. 6 home runs in his last 6 games. Homered in 5 of those 6 games. The one game that he did have 2 home runs was actually the last time he faced Wright. So I definitely think he's somebody I want some exposure to today. Josh Donaldson, another guy, is on a 9-game hitting streak, you know, putting up double-digit fantasy points on the regular. I think he's averaging like 15 fantasy points over his last 9 games. So, you know, he's been hitting about as well as anybody in the league right now. I think both of these guys are in play. You know, you can probably look at some of the other guys on this team too. Like I said, Wright's not a very good pitcher, but those are the 2 main guys that I definitely want to have a little bit of exposure to. Next game, we can look at Atlanta against the New York Mets. Matt Harvey's on the mound for the Mets, and he started to look like the guy that they were calling the Dark Knight last year and the lights-out pitcher. In his last 3 starts, he's gone 20 innings pitched, only given up 8 hits, 3 walks, 2 runs, and he has 17 strikeouts during that time. So about a 5.5 to 1 strikeout to walk ratio. He's only giving up about 2 or 3 hits a start, going about 6 or 7 innings, not even giving up a full run per start lately. So this is the guy who we've been waiting for. Now, this Atlanta offense isn't all that good, but they do have a lot of left-handed bats that they can throw against them. 2 guys that stick out a little bit. I like Harvey a lot today. If I'm not using him, the 2 bats that I might take against him, Malik Smith leading off, still pretty cheap up there at the top of the order. 371 WOBA, 185 ISO for him against right-handed pitching. One thing he does well is hit right-handed pitching and steal bases. So if he gets a hit, he gets on. We could be seeing him going. And, a hit, a stolen base, and a run scored is something that basically pays off his salary in one at-bat. The only other guy I think we can consider, Freddie Freeman, 377 WOBA, 233 ISO for Freeman. He's starting to hit better now. He's starting to look like the guy that we expected him to be after having a little bit of a slow start. So again, this Atlanta offense, not all that great, but if you are going to look at anybody, I think it's the left-handed bats, and I think those are the 2 guys that stand out the most to me. On the other side, we got John Gant pitching for Atlanta, and he's a converted relief pitcher. If he goes 5 innings, I think that's going to be a lot for him. Left-handed bats are the way you want to attack them. So a guy like Granderson, 375 WOBA, 233 ISO, definitely in play. I don't mind using a righty like Cespedes, who does well in righty-on-righty situations. So 377 WOBA, 264 ISO since the start of last year for him. Both of those guys kind of stand out to me. Conforto is their best bat so far this season against right-handed pitching, but he is just coming back from the DL. So if you want to include him, I can understand it, although I'm still taking a wait-and-see approach. A guy like Neil Walker does very well against right-handed pitching. So these are the guys that I would be looking to get into my lineup. I do think the Mets can score some runs here against Gant. But remember, they're at home in Citi Field, not really the greatest hitters park. So I'm not looking for them to put up a huge number, but I do expect them to score some runs. Next game we can look at, Chicago White Sox against Cleveland. Jose Quintana on the mound for the White Sox, and he's actually been really good this year. Right-handed bat's kind of the way you want to go after him. 254 average for them. He has a very low home run rate, although his fly ball rate is a little bit elevated. So I think one of those 2 things needs to correct themselves at some point. Either he's going to give up less fly balls, or some of those fly balls are going to start turning into home runs. I'm not sure which one is going to wind up happening, but if you look at the numbers, there's a little bit of a discrepancy. So normally his fly ball rate is a little bit lower, and his home run rate has always kind of been low. So I'm thinking that's the way it's going to regress. But again, if he keeps giving up fly balls at the rate he's been giving them up and not getting the ground balls, eventually it's going to come back and bite him. 2 guys that I think you can look at here. Napoli, very good against left-handed pitching. 390 WOBA, 270 ISO since the start of last season. Probably going to be batting cleanup again for Cleveland, so he's somebody that I think is in play. Francisco Lindor, always like him against left-handed pitching. 379 WOBA, 183 ISO score. Hitting 3rd in that order. He's getting hits. He's scoring runs. He's, just played absolutely unbelievable this year. Really, really, really solid season that he's having. Puts himself up there in the top 5 shortstop, talks, for season-long drafts starting next season, because he's been that good this year. Excuse me. On the other side of this game, we got Trevor Bauer. Right-handed bats have a higher average against him, but left-handed bats have a higher fly ball rate and more home runs. So righties have been hitting him for average. Lefties haven't been taking him yard. There's 2 guys on the White Sox I'm looking at. I do still like Tim Anderson. His price is up in a lot of spots. Where he's still cheap, I definitely still think that this guy is in play. I mean, he's had 18 and 20 fantasy points in his last 2 games from the leadoff spot. So even if you were paying $4,000 or $5,000 on DraftKings for him, or $4,000 on FanDuel, he's still been returning value the last couple of games there. I don't want to pay that kind of money for him. I don't want to pay up for him. I liked it a lot better when we were getting him min price on both sites. I think he's still cheap on FanDuel at like $2,500, but I think he's in the mid 3s on DraftKings, which it's not really expensive, but it's not a super value anymore. I do still like him, but I don't love him like I used to. The other guy I'll look at is Jose Abreu. Very good in righty-on-righty matchups. 362 WOBA for him, 215 ISO score. So I think he is one of those other guys that could do pretty well against Bauer today. Next game, we'll look at Colorado at Miami. John Gray on the mound for Colorado. And John Gray, his numbers are night and day when he's at Coors Field and when he's away. Away from Coors Field, the opposing batting average is only 209 against him. So this guy is actually really good. I mean, he was a top 5 pitching prospect, top 5 draft pick, I think, as well. So he has the pedigree to be a good pitcher. Coors Field just, it kills everybody. So when he's away from Coors, I actually kind of like him. Left-handed bats have actually hit him for a little more power. The average has been the same, pretty low for both right and left-handed bats. So I think you can look at a guy like Christian Yelich, 365 WOBA, 152 ISO, the best left-handed hitter that they have on that Miami team. Derek Dietrich is banged up, so the only other lefties, maybe Ichiro leading off if you want to go that route. Justin Bour is a guy that has a little bit of power, so I think he's in a decent spot here against Gray. He could be one of the guys, that left-handed power situation winds up showing up for. So that's really about it, though. I'm staying away from the righties. No Stanton, no Ozuna today, even though he's been hot. If you're stacking Miami, I guess you use Ozuna, but like I said, Gray has been very good away from home, so I'm not really looking to take a lot of bats here. On the other side of this game, we got Adam Conley, the lefty for Miami, and he's had some good starts this year and also got knocked around a little bit. Right-handed bats have a higher average and a high fly ball percentage against them, so guys like Arenado and Story are definitely in play for me. Both guys can put the ball in the air. Both guys have some power. 387 WOBA, 311 ISO score for Arenado against lefties, so he's really picked it up against lefties this year. Story's 368, 301, so he's flashing a lot of power against left-handed pitching too. Again, Miami's not the easiest ballpark to hit one out of, not the greatest ballpark for hitters, but I do think that these two guys are in a good spot. Lefties have actually done pretty well against Colorado this year, so I'm not looking to stack up Colorado here. I would basically just be looking at the righties as one-offs. And Connolly might even be in a decent spot here, although I don't trust him enough to roll him out there. Next game we'll talk about San Francisco at Tampa Bay. I do like Jeff Samardzija today. Left-handed bats over the last 3 years have had a higher average, higher fly ball rate, higher home run rate against them. But there really aren't a lot of lefties on this Tampa Bay team. I mean, Corey Dickerson's probably the best one, and, he's not really somebody I'm scared of. Tampa has a high strikeout rate against right-handed pitching, and they don't hit right-handed pitching particularly well. So with Samardzija being tough on righties and this team being, pretty weak against righties, I think this is a pretty good spot for him. I do like Evan Longoria a little bit. He's 2 for 6 lifetime against Samardzija and probably the best hitter that they have on that Tampa Bay team. But really, outside of him, a lot of these other guys have not done well lifetime against Samardzija. I think, Forsythe's like 0 for 11. I think Souza's like 0 for 3 or 0 for 4. Like I said, other than Longo, nobody really stands out as somebody who's hit Samardzija before. And as a team, they do not profile well against them. So I like Samardzija a lot more than I like the bats here. On the other side of this game, we got Chris Archer, and Archer's been like Jekyll and Hyde all season long. He has been very good at home, and he is at home in this game. So that does give me a little bit of, thought that he might have some upside. But there's games where he's gone out there, gone 7 innings, thrown like a 2-hitter with 1 walk and struck out double-digit amount of guys. And then there are games where he doesn't even get through the 6th inning and gives up like 6 runs in 5 innings on 9 hits. So, I really don't know what to expect out of him. I think that he's a GPP play because he's somebody that will be low owned today, especially going up against a pretty solid offense like San Francisco. Most of the time when San Francisco leaves their home park, they're getting a big park bump. But Tampa Bay is a good pitcher's park as well, so I don't think they get such a huge bump with this offense. There are a lot of left-handed bats here that they can throw at Archer, guys like Panic, guys like Belt. I don't think that it's going to be a big game for the bats, but I also think that they'll get a couple runs off of Archer. I don't think Archer's going to go and shut him down, so I'm kind of staying away from both sides of that game, to be honest. Next game to talk about, Seattle at Boston. Iwakuma on the mound for Seattle, and he's been solid, but he is a guy that has a high home run rate allowed. Gave up 7 home runs in his last 4 starts. Twice he gave up 3 home runs in a game. So that's not really a good thing. Right-handed bats have been the ones that have been tagging him for most of the home runs, but left-handed bats have a higher average against them. I do like David Ortiz. I mean, his numbers against righties are just so elite, it doesn't matter. 438 WOBA, 347 ISO against right-handed pitching since the start of last season, and he's actually 4 for 8 against Iwakuma with 2 home runs a lifetime. So not only does he profile well, but he's already mashed Iwakuma in a couple meetings that they've had. So I think Ortiz definitely in play. Pedroia is 3 for 9 lifetime with a home run against him too. One of those guys with right-handed power that, does tend to do well against Iwakuma. I think Betts falls into that same situation. I think Hanley Ramirez falls into that same situation. So I don't think this is going to be an easy start for Iwakuma. And this Boston team has been putting up runs like it's nobody's business anyway. So, definitely think all these guys are in play and worth a look. On the other side of this game, we got the former Seattle Mariner, Roenis Elias, that's going to be pitching. Left-handed pitcher for Boston. I think this is only like his 2nd or 3rd start of this season. Or actually, I think it might be his 1st start. I think last game he only pitched, like an inning or 2 in relief. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them lifetime, more home runs, higher home run rate. So I think a guy like Nelson Cruz is in a great spot here. 446 WOBA against lefties, 324 ISO. He homered the last 2 games that they faced a left-handed pitcher. This guy just absolutely kills lefties, and he has for a long time. So Nelson Cruz, definitely somebody I want some exposure to today. The other 2 right-handed bats that I like against lefties on Seattle, catcher Chris Iannetta usually hits left-handed pitching pretty well, and Franklin Gutierrez, who's been hitting in the 2-hole against left-handed pitching too. The problem that you want to watch out for with Gutierrez, it's a lot like the Oakland Athletics, or even a guy like Ryan Rayburn for the Colorado Rockies. If they're starting a left-handed pitcher, Gutierrez is going to start in the 2-hole, probably get 3 at-bats and somewhere into the 6th inning or so. When they bring in a righty, though, they tend to take him out. The last game they brought a righty reliever in the 7th or 8th inning, and Gutierrez got subbed out. So you're not getting a full 5 at-bats out of him, even though he is up towards the top of the order. Just keep that in mind. I know he's cheap, and I know he has good numbers against left-handed pitching. He does have a little bit of pop. He can hit a home run every now and then. But at the same point in time, if they bring in some right-handed relievers, you're probably going to lose an at-bat or 2 out of them, which is always something that we don't like in cash games. In tournaments, I do think he still has the upside. If you're stacking up Seattle, I see no reason not to include him. But, like I said, for cash games, he's not somebody that I'm looking to use as a salary saver because you might only get 3 at-bats out of him and, see him get pulled later on. Next game we can talk about, we got Cincinnati against Houston. Houston is a huge favorite in this game. Lance McCullers is on the mound, and he's been pretty good. Does have a little bit of reverse splits. Right-handed bats tend to hit him better than left-handers do in the limited innings that we've seen him in the majors. I still like a guy like Joey Votto, 400 WOBA for him against both sides of the plate. So he's somebody that's solid no matter what. And then I also think the second guy that I like in this game is probably Adam Duvall. Right-handed bat with some power. Like I said, right-handers do better against Lance McCullers. So I think Duvall would probably be the second one. But really, I like McCullers. I think he's in a pretty good spot. He's a guy that's a little above a strikeout per inning, doesn't usually get knocked around too much. He's been keeping the walks down. And if he keeps guys off of base and doesn't give up a lot of home runs, he's going to be pretty solid in this league. So he's been good in the limited innings that we've already seen him in the majors. I think McCullers is in a pretty good spot here today. I wouldn't mind using him to pick on that, Cincinnati offense that's pretty weak other than those guys right there in the middle. On the other side of this game, we have one of the worst pitchers on the mound today in John Lamb, which is why I think Houston's a minus 250 favorite. Now, Lamb is a lefty, and he struggles with right-handed bats. Houston has a whole bunch of right-handed bats that hit left-handed pitching very well. Plus, Cincinnati has a bad bullpen. So even after they chase Lamb, they're still going to be going up against probably the worst part of that bullpen, the long relief guys that they're just using to chew up some innings. So I think this game could get ugly, and I think Houston can keep piling it on. So I really like these Houston bats. George Springer, 408 WOBA, 243 ISO, kills left-handed pitching. Jose Altuve, 424 WOBA, 183 ISO, has always killed left-handed pitching. Probably one of the best hitters we have in the league against lefties. Hit 400 against lefties batting average-wise in 2014. Had a WOBA over 400 against them again last year, 2015, and is just continuing right where he left off. Carlos Correa back from injury, another guy who actually hits left-handed pitching pretty well. His numbers have taken a little dip because he was playing hurt for most of the beginning of the season and just was really, really slumping before they put him on the DL. But even with that being said, he's still a 352, 213 lifetime guy against left-handed pitching. So I think he's in play. Guys like Marwin Gonzalez hit lefties well. You got Carlos Gomez down there towards the bottom of the order, a sneaky guy to include in the stack that I like to use against lefties. And if I'm, stacking up Houston, the game is in Houston, great hitters ballpark. I really think this Houston team is going to pound out a bunch of runs today and maybe win somebody a tournament, to be honest. Next team we're going to talk about, New York Yankees at Minnesota. Masahiro Tanaka's on the mound, and he's been tough on both lefties and righties. His problem is he does get tagged for the occasional home run every now and then, but he hasn't been giving up any walks. He hasn't been giving up a lot of hits, which means if he gets tagged for a solo shot, it's not really all that big a deal. Minnesota is not a very good team against right-handed pitching. They have a very right-handed dominant lineup. So I do think Tanaka's in a pretty good spot here. I think he could have a pretty good game overall. On the other side of that game, we got Pat Dean, the youngster for Minnesota that's up there pitching. He struggled more with right-handed bats early on in his career and even in the minors. So a guy like A-Rod's got really good numbers against left-handed pitching. He's in play. Starlin Castro's been hitting lefties well. Carlos Beltran hits left-handed pitching well, so he should be up there. All these guys up towards the top of the order that can swing from the right side, I think are all in play here for the Yankees. And I like all three of them. Beltran probably the most, A-Rod definitely only a tournament play for me. And Castro's been a guy that's been pretty cheap and put up big numbers against lefties and has helped people win some tournaments. So I think all three of them are worth a look. Next team we can talk about, we got Detroit at Kansas City. Michael Fulmer, the rookie, is on the mound. He's been good. He's a high strikeout guy, about a strikeout per inning. Hasn't really been getting knocked around. Left-handed bats tend to do better against him. So I think a guy like Eric Hosmer's in a good spot. 391 WOBA, 180 ISO. You can also look at a guy like Whit Merrifield, who's cheap and been leading off for them. He's been doing a good job. You can look at a guy like Sal Perez, who's been absolutely on fire. Catcher hitting in the 5-hole. So a guy that gets RBI opportunities and is usually up with some guys on base at least a couple times a game. And then on the other side of this game, we got Yordano Ventura. Right and left-handed bats do okay against him. He does have a high walk rate. He's been walking a ton of guys, but he does have a low fly ball rate and a low home run rate. So he's not somebody who gives up a lot of home runs, but he does give up a lot of base runners, does give up a decent amount of hits, and he's a guy that can be unhinged. I mean, he got lit up against Baltimore, threw at Machado, started a rumble, and then came back the next game against the Chicago White Sox and looked like he was absolutely dominant. I mean, I think he put up like 32 DraftKings points, 7 innings, scattered like 3 or 4 hits, struck out 8 or 9 guys. So, like I said, sometimes he looks great, sometimes he looks horrible. Doesn't usually get lit up, doesn't give up a lot of home runs, tends to keep the ball in the ballpark, especially at home in Kansas City. So, I mean, I like guys like Miggy, 3 for 10 lifetime against them. I like guys like Kinsler, 6 for 16 lifetime against them. V-Mart, 4 of 16, but he has tagged him for 2 home runs already. Just remember that J.D. Martinez got injured yesterday. I really doubt he's going to play. I think they were taking him for x-rays. So the lineup does get a little bit weaker, but the guys that are in there, they've seen Ventura quite a bit, and most of them have some pretty decent numbers lifetime against them. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him give up a few runs, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Detroit is not the highest scoring team on the slate today. So just keep that in mind if you're going to use them. Next game we talk about Texas at St. Louis. I kind of like Cole Hamels in this spot. Hamels has been pretty good, and St. Louis has struggled against left-handed pitching. The one guy that stands out for me on their team against lefties is actually Stephen Piscotty. 444 WOBA, 226 ISO, and the limited at-bats he's had in the last year and a half in the majors. But, those are some really, really good numbers against left-handed pitching. But outside of Piscotty, this team does not really hit lefties all that well. On the other side of this game, we got Michael Wacha on the mound, and Wacha hasn't been all that good this year either. He's actually tougher on left-handed bats. Right-handed bats have a higher average against them. A little bit of a reverse splits guy over the last couple of years. So I guess you want to look at the righties, guys like Ian Desmond, Jurickson Profar, Adrian Beltre back in the lineup, even Ryan Rua, who's been pretty good. These are the guys that I think I would try to attack Wacha with. I don't know if I really want to attack Wacha with a lot of bats, but he's definitely not somebody I'm going to be using. He's not a high strikeout guy. He's not getting you big totals at the end. Even with his price being down a little bit, I still don't think he's going to return value here today. So definitely not using Wacha. If I do anything, I'll take the right-handed bats against them. Next game, we talk about the Angels against the Oakland Athletics. Matt Shoemaker's on the mound, and in the last 4 starts, this guy's been lights out. Actually, 5 straight awesome starts that he's put up. He's in a good ballpark here in Oakland. He's going against a weak offense. Oakland's not really all that great. They don't hit right-handed pitching particularly well. I mean, their 2 biggest bats are, Chris Davis, who does have some home run upside against right-handers, and then Danny Valencia, who's actually proven since he came over from Toronto that he can hit right-handed pitching. But outside of those 2, I mean, maybe Stephen Vogt as a left-handed hitting catcher who hits righty as well. There's not a lot of guys that are scaring me. Billy Burns and Coco Crisp on top of the order. I think this is going to be another decent spot for Shoemaker. And the way he's pitched over the course of the last month, this guy's looked very, very good. On the other side of the game, we got Kendall Graveman, who I don't think is a very good pitcher. I think he's definitely somebody we can pick on. The problem is, you got Mike Trout, right? 413 WOBA, 282 ISO, righty on righty matchups. He's a stud. But where do you really go from there? I mean, Jeffrey Marte's been okay, so maybe you look there. Yanel Escobar at the top of the order. Johnny Giavotella has been winning people $100,000 lately. So, I mean, do any of those names really excite you? Do you want to take Pujols in the righty on righty matchup, which is really what he likes best, but he hasn't been great this year? Do you want a Cole Calhoun or a JB Shuck in there? Like I said, there's not a lot of guys that excite me here outside of Trout. But, I do think that Graveman's a bad pitcher, and I do think they're going to get some runs against them. So if you want to go that route, I can understand why you would do so. I just think it's, a little bit risky. I don't normally see huge upside out of this Angels offense. Next game, we can talk about Milwaukee against the LA Dodgers. Now, at first glance, Julio Urias is on the mound again today. This is the rookie, very talented rookie. You can see that he has some good out pitches. You can see that he has some giddy up on his fastball. I mean, you can tell why people are excited about him. But at the same point in time, he has been getting knocked around a little bit. He's going up. He's a left-hander going up against a very right-handed heavy Milwaukee lineup that knocked around another left-hander in Scott Kazmir yesterday. You look at Ryan Braun, 420 WOBA, 250 ISO for him. He has been banged up a little bit this season, but he's still producing. You look at a guy like Jonathan Villar on top of the order. He showed you yesterday why he's so good. 372 ISO, 372 WOBA for him, 167 ISO. He had a home run yesterday. He has stolen base upside as well. Could basically fill up a stat sheet, score in so many ways. So where he's cheap, he's another guy I think you can look at. And then you got guys like Chris Carter, who hit the big home run yesterday at the end of the game. Jonathan Lucroy always hit left-handed pitching well. Aaron Hill, who hit in the 2-hole yesterday and has been just absolutely killing left-handed pitching over the course of the last month. Some big games, a bunch of home runs, a bunch of multi-hit games against lefties. So, I mean, like I said, I don't think this is a soft spot for Urias, the young rookie fireballer for the Dodgers. I do think he's going to get knocked around a little. I actually like his counterpart, Zach Davies, a little bit better. Davies has thrown a couple good starts together here. Left-handed bats, higher average, higher fly ball rate, more home runs. So that's the way you want to go after him. Outside of Corey Seager, though, these other lefties haven't really been hitting all that well. Guys like Grandal and Adrian Gonzalez. Seager does have a 378 WOBA and a 226 ISO, so he's been very, very good. He's definitely somebody I think I would look at and wouldn't mind having some exposure to here today. Then the last game up, we got Washington against San Diego. I think this is actually a great spot for Joe Ross, the pitcher for Washington. Ross is very tough on right-handed batters. In 2016, they're hitting 196 against them. In 2015, they only hit 172 against them, and he has a high strikeout rate against righties. You look at the San Diego team, and it's very right-handed dominant. You got all those big right-handed bats up at the top, guys like Kemp, guys like Will Myers. The only lefties they have, Solarte's a switch hitter. You got like John Jay leading off for them, but those guys don't really scare me all that much. So I kind of like Ross here. I think he's in a very good spot against a team that struggles against right-handed pitching, and he's a guy that absolutely dominates right-handed bats. So I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see Ross be one of the better pitchers on the day. On the other side of the mound, we got Christian Friedrich, the left-hander. Right-handed bats the way you want to attack him. Ryan Zimmerman absolutely kills lefties. 386 WOBA, 308 ISO score. So he's somebody that tends to go low-owned against left-handed pitching, but he's been killing them this year. So I think you got to look at him. Also, guys like Jason Worth, Anthony Rendon, I think they're both in play. Worth 393 WOBA, 308 ISO, so he's been just as good against the lefties. Anthony Rendon doesn't have a big ISO score, but a 367 WOBA against left-handed pitching, so he's a guy that could rack up a couple hits for you. I like the righties here. Normally we talk about the lefties, guys like Harper and Murphy and maybe even Revere at the top of the order. You may actually even see a guy like Michael Taylor, who's a right-handed bat at the top of the order against a lefty. Maybe Revere gets a day off or gets moved down into the lineup. So I think that's the way I'd kind of look to go after it here. And that sums it up for the 14-game slate that we have today. Thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.